There is a moment in almost every person's life when they look at their bank account and feel a quiet, heavy kind of shame. Not the loud shame that comes from public embarrassment, but the kind that sits with you at 2 in the morning when the house is quiet, and you are trying to figure out why, no matter how hard you work, the numbers never seem to move in the right direction. You are working more hours than you ever thought you would. You are doing everything you were told to do. And somehow, it still feels like you are running on a treadmill that someone else controls the speed of. If that feeling is familiar to you, I want you to stay with me through this entire video, because what I'm about to share with you is not just financial advice. It is something much deeper than that. It is about the psychological wiring that determines whether money flows toward you or away from you, and it starts with one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire conversation about wealth. The rich buy assets, the poor buy liabilities. That sentence sounds simple. It sounds like something you would read on a motivational poster in a corporate break room. But when you actually sit with it, when you trace it back to its roots in human psychology and behavioral science, it becomes one of the most profound explanations for why the wealth gap exists and keeps widening. And more importantly, it becomes a roadmap for how to change the direction your life is moving in, even if you are starting from a place that feels impossibly far from where you want to be. Let us start from the very beginning, because most people have never been given a clear definition of what an asset actually is, and the confusion around that definition is costing people their financial futures every single day. An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. That is it. That is the whole distinction. But the reason this matters so much, the reason this single mental framework can change the entire trajectory of someone's financial life, is because most people have been taught the exact opposite of this truth. They have been taught to call things assets when those things are actually bleeding them dry. Think about the family home. In almost every culture, in almost every corner of the world, people grow up hearing that buying a house is the smartest financial decision they will ever make. It is sold as the ultimate sign of success, stability, and intelligence. And so people spend the best earning years of their lives pouring money into a mortgage, into property taxes, into maintenance, into insurance, into renovations, into all of the invisible costs that come with owning a place where you live. And they feel good about it because they have been told they are building an asset. But here's the question that almost nobody asks. Is that house putting money into your pocket, or is it taking money out of your pocket every single month? For the vast majority of homeowners, the answer is that it is taking money out, which, by the actual definition, makes it a liability, not an asset. Now, I'm not saying that buying a home is always a mistake. That is not the point. The point is that the language we use, the mental categories we organize our financial decisions into, shape the choices we make at every turn. And when people are operating with a broken mental map, they make decisions that feel smart and responsible in the moment, but quietly destroy their financial future over time. This is where behavioral psychology enters the conversation in a very serious way. There is a concept called mental accounting, which was developed by Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler, and it describes the way human beings naturally sort money into different mental categories based on where it came from, what it feels like, and what it is supposed to be used for. People treat money differently depending on the story they attach to it. A tax refund feels like found money, so people spend it without the same hesitation they would have if they had earned it through hard work. A purchase that feels like an investment feels virtuous, so people make it without fully interrogating whether it is actually creating value in their lives. The wealthy understand this psychological trap at a deep level, not necessarily because they are smarter or more disciplined as individuals, but because somewhere along the way they were exposed to a different mental framework. They learned to ask a different question before making a financial decision. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they ask, "Will this create more wealth for me over time?" That single shift in the question changes everything. It changes the entire decision-making process. Here is something that researchers in behavioral economics have found consistently across dozens of studies. Human beings are not naturally rational about money. We are emotional about money. We make decisions based on how things make us feel, and then we build rational justifications for those decisions after the fact. This is not a character flaw. This is just how human cognition works. The brain is not a calculator. It is a storytelling machine. And the stories we tell ourselves about money, about what we deserve, about what success looks like, about what is safe and what is risky, those stories determine our financial reality far more than our income does. This is why you can find people who earn six figures and still feel broke, and people who earn modest salaries who quietly build real wealth over time. The difference is not the income. The difference is the story they are operating from and the behavioral patterns that story produces. Let us talk about what wealthy people actually do, because it is not magic and it is not luck, even though it can look like both from the outside. People who consistently build wealth develop a habit that is almost religious in its consistency. Before money leaves their control, they ask whether it is moving toward something that will generate more money or toward something that will simply be consumed and disappear. They develop what psychologists call a future-oriented time perspective. They are able to feel the future as real in the present moment. They can feel the weight of a decision made today as it will land 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now. Most people do not operate this way. Most people are living almost entirely in the present tense when it comes to money. They feel the desire right now. They feel the discomfort of not having the thing right now. They feel the social pressure to appear successful right now. And those present moment feelings override the abstract future consequences of the decision. This is not weakness. This is deeply human. But it is also the engine that drives the perpetual cycle of buying liabilities while believing they are buying assets. Think about how this plays out in real life. A person gets a raise at work. The first instinct for most people is to upgrade their lifestyle to match the new income. Bigger apartment, newer car, better restaurants, more vacations. These things feel like rewards. They feel like the natural result of working hard and succeeding. And culturally, they are celebrated. The people around you tell you that you deserve it. The advertising industry, which is one of the most sophisticated psychological manipulation systems ever created by human beings, is constantly telling you that spending money on consumption is a form of self-expression and self-respect. But what actually happens when someone consistently upgrades their lifestyle every time their income increases is something called lifestyle inflation. And it is one of the most reliable wealth-destroying patterns in existence. The person earns more but saves the same percentage or even less. The expenses grow to fill the income, and the gap between where they are and where they could be keeps widening, just in the wrong direction. Now contrast that with what a wealth-building mindset actually produces in the same situation. A person gets a raise. The first question they ask is, how much of this increase can I direct towards something that will generate more income for me? They might put it into index funds. They might use it to pay down high-interest debt faster, which is itself an asset-building move because it frees up future cash flow. They might invest it in developing a skill that will increase their earning capacity further. They might use it to start a small side business. They are always asking the same core question. Is this money moving towards something that grows or towards something that disappears? The psychological difference between these two responses is not about being cheap or depriving yourself of joy. This is a misunderstanding that keeps a lot of people trapped. The wealthy do not universally deprive themselves. In fact, many of the most financially successful people in the world are extraordinarily generous with themselves and others. The difference is sequencing. They build the assets first, and then they use the income generated by those assets to fund their lifestyle. The poor and the middle class fund their lifestyle first, and then they wonder why there's nothing left over to build with. This sequencing matters more than almost any other financial principle, and yet it is almost never taught explicitly. People are taught to earn and spend. They are not taught to earn, invest, and then spend from the returns. The system was not designed to teach them that, because a population that is perpetually consuming is more economically useful to certain interests than a population that is steadily building independent wealth. I want to go even deeper into the psychology here, because the behavioral patterns around money are almost never purely about money. They are about identity. They are about how you see yourself, how you believe others see you, and what you believe you are capable of and deserving of. There is a term in psychology called the self-concept, and it refers to the story you carry about who you are. And your financial behavior is one of the clearest expressions of your self-concept that exists. People who grew up in environments where money was always scarce, where financial stress was the background noise of daily life, where adults around them were always struggling, those people often develop a self-concept that places them on the side of the people who struggle with money. Not consciously, not as an explicit belief, but as a deep, quiet assumption about how life works and where they fit in it. And this assumption shapes their behavior in ways they are often completely unaware of. When a person with a scarcity self-concept gets money, they often feel an unconscious urge to get rid of it. This can look like impulsive spending. It can look like lending money to people who do not pay it back. It can look like making decisions that sabotage their own financial progress in subtle ways. Researchers call this self-sabotage, but from the inside, it rarely feels like sabotage. It feels like generosity, or like living your life, or like not being the kind of person who hoards money. But underneath those rationalizations is often a deeper belief that says people like me do not keep money. People like me are not the kind of people who have assets. That kind of life is for other people. This is the part of the conversation about wealth that is almost never had publicly. And it is the part that I believe matters most. Because you can teach someone every financial principle that exists. You can explain assets and liabilities in perfect detail. You can hand them a budget and an investment plan. And if their underlying self-concept says they are not the kind of person who builds wealth, they will find a way to confirm that belief through their behavior. The beliefs come first. The behavior follows. This is why wealthy families tend to raise wealthy children and why poverty tends to be generational. It is not purely about inherited money, although that certainly plays a role. It is about inherited psychology. The children of wealthy people grow up watching wealth being built. They absorb the language, the habits, the assumptions, the comfort with financial concepts that their environment provides. They grow up believing at a cellular level that owning assets is something that people like them do. And so they do it. The children of people who struggle financially grow up absorbing a very different set of lessons. They learn that money is stressful. They learn that there is never enough. They learn that financial security is fragile and temporary. And they often develop a relationship with money that is built on fear, on urgency, on the need to use it before it disappears, rather than on confidence and long-term thinking. None of this is anyone's fault, and understanding it is not about blame. It is about awareness, because awareness is the first crack in the wall. The moment you can see the pattern clearly, the moment you can hold it up to the light and examine it, it loses some of its invisible power over you. It goes from being the water you are swimming in without noticing to being something you can name, examine, and begin to consciously work against. The most important shift a person can make is not in their bank account. It is in their identity. It is in beginning to see themselves as someone who builds things, someone who makes decisions based on long-term value rather than short-term feeling, someone who is capable of understanding and participating in the asset-building process. That identity shift does not happen all at once. It happens one decision at a time. It happens every time you choose to put a small amount of money somewhere it can grow instead of somewhere it disappears. It happens every time you ask the wealth-building question before making a financial move. And here's what the research shows us about habit formation and identity change. Psychologist James Clear has written extensively about how identity and behavior are connected in a feedback loop. You do not build a new identity and then start acting differently. You act differently in small and consistent ways, and those actions gradually build a new identity. Every time you make a choice that a wealth-building person would make, you are casting a vote for a new version of yourself. And over time, those votes accumulate into a new story about who you are. This is genuinely exciting because it means the door is open regardless of where you are starting. It does not matter if you are starting with $50 or $5,000. What matters is the direction. What matters is the question you are beginning to ask. Is this money moving toward something that grows or toward something that disappears? Start small and start real. Open an investment account if you do not have one. Put something in it, even if it is a tiny amount. Buy one share of an index fund. Read one book about how money actually works. Have one honest conversation with yourself about the financial patterns you inherited and whether you want to keep them or trade them for something better. These are not dramatic gestures, but they are the beginning of a completely different story. The wealthy do not have a secret that is being hidden from everyone else. They have a framework. They have a set of questions they ask consistently. They have a relationship with money that is built on clarity rather than fear. And every single one of those things is learnable. Every single one of those things is available to anyone who is willing to do the slow, sometimes uncomfortable work of examining their own patterns and beginning to replace the ones that are not working. You are watching this video because something in you is looking for a different way. Something in you already knows that the path you have been on is not leading where you want to go. That knowing, that restlessness, that refusal to accept that this is just how it is, that is the most important asset you have right now. Because that is what drives the decision to think differently, to ask better questions, to start building even when it feels impossibly slow at first. The rich buy assets and the poor buy liabilities. But that is not a permanent sentence. It is a description of a pattern. And patterns can be changed. They are changed all the time by real people who decided that they were done being defined by the financial psychology they inherited and were ready to build a new one. That person can be you. Not in some abstract future. Starting now with the next financial decision you make, with the next question you ask yourself before money leaves your hands. If this video resonated with you, if something here landed in a way that felt true and important, I want you to know that this channel exists specifically for people who are doing exactly this kind of work, people who are willing to go deeper than surface-level financial tips and look honestly at the psychological roots of their relationship with money. I genuinely care about the people who find their way here, and every video we put out is designed to give you something real that you can take into your actual life. Subscribe if you have not already, and take a look at the other videos on this channel, because this conversation is just getting started and there is a lot more here that I think is going to matter to you.